I feel like it would be difficult to find something that also deals with Peter Pan that feels quite as good, because it's so well written, and also it's so genuine in expressing what it wants to be about.
Yeah.
It doesn't half-ass anything. It's like, yeah, being a lost boy sucks. Quack.
So, welcome to the Little Duck Book Club with Duck number 1,
Ren, and Duck number 2,
Anna. And today we're going to talk about a book of quality, actually. Lost Boy.
Fucking miracle.
By Christina Henry. But before we do that, let's go back to a little up-to-date book sphere thingy that we do. So is there anything that you want to talk about this episode?
I mean, I don't really, I hate TikTok. I do not keep up with the drama in the book world. I am under a rock and I like it here. It's nice and cozy. I hear none of the garbage that goes on online.
So no exciting books or anything that you've been reading or stuff?
I mean, what have I been reading? I haven't been reading as much because I've been focusing on writing, because
yes,
NaNoWriMo, so I had to, first in October, I had a lot of time that I spent on prepping stuff, like plotting and doing world building and everything. And now that it's November, it's like, damn, it's 1,666 words every single day is, that does take some time.
I'm in awe. I'm a little cheerleader every single time you send me the screenshot. I was like, yes, they're doing it.
I mean, it went well the first 3 days, and then yesterday, I was busy. The weird part is I'm more busy on the weekend because a bunch of shit just happened to align on the weekends. So I was just way busier, and I had D&D in the evening and stuff. So I only I wrote 250 words or whatever. So it's like, damn.
No, that's understandable.
Gotta catch up to that again.
You will, I'm sure. I do have a little bit of stuff. I have past, present, and future news. No, I went to the Frankfurt Book Fair. I mean, you do know that. It was an interesting experience. It was full as fuck. I mean, in a similar way as to any bigger convention that is international, because the German convention centers are big, but they're not US big, it's not like San Diego Comic-Con in terms of the floor. So the Frankfurt one, it was super interesting. I did not get to go to the floor that was about publishing and young authors and stuff like that, because I was initially interested just to see what kind of opportunities you could have, because there was agents and stuff. But apparently those were for the press days. So nobody was on that floor anymore, and I couldn't really see how that goes. That was interesting. Then currently I'm reading the autobiography from our current ESA astronaut, Matthias Maurer. It's really interesting because you read it and it reads like science fiction, but it's science fact. This happened to the guy, he went to space. Yeah. So it's a bit crazy.
He is an astronaut, that's his job, yeah.
But it's just crazy reading about it. She's like, oh yeah, I went into the rocket and then, just went to the
it
ISS.
Exploded, whatever. I'm fine. I live, bitch.
And in future news, next week Lightlark 2 is gonna come out, Nightbane. I'm so excited and scared, but also excited.
I also love that this is gonna date this episode so heavily, because then it's like, oh damn, you recorded
true.
this half a year ago.
No, we have Lost Boys scheduled, I think. I have to look at our schedule again, but yeah.
I don't think we have it scheduled yet.
No? Well, gotta schedule it.
It's probably gonna come out in a timely manner. It's not gonna come out before the Nightbane episode though, which is very funny.
No. And I didn't even think of bringing this up, but when you said you're not on track with the TikTok stuff, there has been, was it on TikTok or was it on Instagram, the publisher, the printing house from SJ Maas posted a video of them printing the third Crescent City book. And it's like, you know, Sarah J. Maas, she has her own certain color, like the color's called S.J. Maas Gray or something, and everything. And they just showed a lot of pages printing. And there's, for each chapter, because it was a page with a chapter beginning, there was a sword on there. It was like chapter blah, blah, blah. And the sword looked, you know, from the short seconds that we had. Some people said it looks like Aelin's sword, Goldwyn. So now people are panicking. Are these pages from Kingdom of Ash, like from a new edition that they just, you know, secretly sneaked in there? Is it genuinely from the new Crescent City book? And there's like, you know, like the Throne of Glass people are actually gonna be involved in that as well. It's the Massey versus Quaking.
Honestly, because I simply do not give a shit, I think it is funnier if they do get involved, because there's literally no way Sarah J. Maas can keep this straight in any way where this, like, works.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way this works, like, consistently, because I don't believe she plans well enough for this. She does not strike me as somebody with the self-control to be like, okay, we need a plan and we need to stick to it. She's like, no, I have a great idea, and just writes it, and her editor is like, well, I'm getting paid to tell her she's great, so that's what I'm doing. And then it just goes to print, you know? So
I'm definitely excited. I pre-ordered it finally, so that when it comes out, I can go into the store and get it. Because last year or 2 years ago when Crescent City 2 came out,
yeah,
there was this big issue in Germany where all of the big sellers who like get the books from the same kind of warehouse, they didn't expect people to want the English edition as much, and people would get their books like 4 weeks late, like a whole month. So I pre-ordered it into the store because store is priority. Hopefully we have something cooking in February then.
Damn. I mean, I am excited to hear whatever batshit goes down in there from you. I'm not gonna read it. I don't hate myself enough for that. I just, like, I am so glad I stopped reading Sarah J. Maas's books after Aqua War. I was like, you know what? I think this is a good place to stop. And it was. Everything I've heard since, I'm like, damn, I'm pretty satisfied with the experience I had.
I don't know, I'm fascinated in kind of a morbid way. So I have to continue.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you end up enjoying it, like, that's good. Like, if that's something you enjoy, then that's cool. I know I wouldn't, so I'm not touching it. Like, I'm like, this is self-care. No matter how many people talk about it, I know I do not give enough of the shit. Yeah. But
well, then let's talk about something you do enjoy. Because this was a book that you had been harassing me to read for literal years.
The call out.
And I finally bought it last year and I finally read it this year. So why don't you give us the intro to Lost Boy?
Lost Boy is urban fantasy, horror fantasy book by author Christina Henry. It is a reinterpretation of some of the lore surrounding Peter Pan. It's not like, I mean, you can call it a retelling if you want to, as like an origin story of Captain Hook, so you know. It is a tragedy. Like, it does not have a happy ending. It ends very unfortunately for a main character, Jamie. But basically we follow Jamie and see like how life is with Peter Pan and the Lost Boys, and then shit starts progressively getting worse, and it never gets better. That's yeah.
That's a good way to describe it.
I remember that it was the second Christina Henry book I read. The first one was Alice. I had it on like from some recommendation list from somebody, and I enjoyed Alice a lot. And then I saw, I think, Lost Boy and The Mermaid in the store, and then I read Lost Boy first, and I loved it. It is to this day my favorite Christina Henry book. I have read almost all of them. I did not read the sequels to Alice because I was like, no, this ending is satisfactory to me. Like, whatever happens in the other ones, I don't care. This reads like it could be a standalone, and I don't like sequels to books that seem like they
are finished.
Already can be standalones. But like, I've read everything else by her, and like, it's still my favorite. I read it first in 2019, and rereading it, I was like, damn, this still fucks. This is still good. I
mean, it's my first Christina Henry book I read. I still have read. I haven't read that yet. So Lost Boy was the first one I picked up, and I read this when my brother was visiting me over the summer, and he's not a big reader just simply because he doesn't enjoy it.
Fair.
And I was like, is it okay if I take it on a train with me? You know, train ride is long, you'll be on your phone. He was like, yeah, sure. And I was sitting there and I was reading it, and it was the part where the animosity between the boys like really goes up, like before before the Crocodile Beach scene.
All right,
that
before,
was that when we were on the train, and I noticed my brother like kind of creeping over me, and I realized he had been reading with me for the past 30 minutes on this train ride, and he was like breathing heavy. He was like, what's going on? So it is, even if you're not an avid reader, this book is definitely I think the length is also perfect. It should not be longer than it is.
No, I think there's also like, especially if you don't read that much but you do like retellings, or you're interested in Peter Pan, or you're just like a nice like kind of horror-y urban fantasy experience, like, because of the fact that the main character Jamie is for the longest part of the story a child and everyone else is a child, the language is relatively simple. So it's not like if you were like, oh, I'm gonna get into reading, everyone loves Game of Thrones, and then you start reading Game of Thrones and it's very dense with a lot of more complex words. But this is like, it's very beginner friendly, I would say. So like, even if you don't read a lot, it is very interesting, and it is like the simple writing really works for it. Like, even though these children don't have the like complex words to articulate their experiences, like, it still hits, and sometimes it hits even more when they use language of children to describe, you know, how 6 of their friends died in one day, and like there is a lot of power in like simple language and not obfuscating it with like complex words and flowery language just to sound deep. Sometimes it hits harder if it's simple. Like Madeline Miller does that too. Her book's very, like, the sentences are simple, it's very clear, and that's part of what makes it so effective. Though
I feel like Madeline Miller kind of spins it a little bit more, like in terms of like elaborate language. And here, since, I mean, you said it, since Jamie is the main character, especially when he describes his emotions and like how he thinks other people are feeling just from looking at them, it gives it such a childish tone, which makes it more worrying when you think about what is actually happening. It makes you go even more like, oh my god, these are little kids. Like, considering, so we have Jamie at the beginning, and he's like Peter's right-hand man, and when you realize Jamie's age compared to little Charlie, that's when you realize, fuck, like, these are really young kids. Because, you know, you could kind of be like, oh, you know, they are older boys in terms of they're going from boys to like very like tween kind of age.
Specifically all children.
Yeah.
They are all too young to be considered teenagers. Like, that's a very hard-hitting point of it. It's like, because they never age, they are all like in the ages between like 8 to 11 or 12.
Yeah.
That's kind of where they're stuck. And like everyone who ages leaves or is kicked out or like disappears and like
in some mysterious way.
We know what Peter does with the ones he doesn't need to keep anymore. But like, yeah. So you have Jamie being in this role of like
a caretaker,
in like the responsible adult almost, but still not. Like, he's still super young, but he's still trying to keep all these other children in line and trying to make sure they eat and trying to make sure they don't die because, oh my god, do they die all the time?
But I feel like... Oh, I'm sorry, you weren't finished, right?
Yeah, I wanted to add that, like, an especially interesting part of that is also that Jamie is technically a child, and a lot about him is childish, but he's also weighed down by over a century of being alive and being a child and watching other children die around him constantly.
Yeah. And I feel like the moment that Jamie, like... I mean, it's established in the beginning that he looks out for the boys, and that... I think they say this very soon or very early on as well, that they're like his boys. And later on he realizes what that means in relation to Peter, that, you know, he's kind of the person who looks out for them. But I feel like that's also kind of the starting point where he starts to grow, like physically. He's like, oh, you know, maybe I'm expanding a bit on my tree branch that I'm sleeping on. But before he actively, you know, notices it, is like, yeah, because you're taking the responsibility for everything.
That part is so interesting because Peter brings all the boys from the normal world to the island, but Jamie is the one who takes care of them. And at the beginning, we have Jamie, like, think to himself that, like, I am the one who takes care of them. I treat them when they're sick. I make sure they eat. I make sure they have clothing. I make sure everything that needs to get done gets done. And they're at least somewhat safe. But all of them love Peter more than me. Yeah. Like, they like me, but they love Peter more, even though I am the one who takes care of them. Like, the resentment is there. And then it's such a powerful moment, almost at the end of the book, where one of the boys, who's now also an adult, just like tells him that, no, actually, all of us loved you more, but we knew we couldn't show that because Peter would hate it. And also, you loved him so much that we all also loved him for you.
Yeah. Which is
like,
such a fucked up little dynamic. I love it.
Yeah, it is. It really is hard. I think it's very interesting. I mean, obviously, logically, we start the book at the point where things start to happen. Like, the Lost Boys have kind of had the kind of inertia just moving forward and not much changing for, like, a long time. But then things change because Peter brings home a fucking 5-year-old.
Yeah.
And that's when Jamie is required to take more responsibility and, like, be more of an actual caretaker and not just, you know, throwing food at people when they're being silly and, like, beating them up when they get too out of whack. But then, like, he gets way more into the parenting role, and that also, like, literally makes him grow.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's so funny that it's, like, so literally that, like, yeah, you have to grow as a person, but all of these boys, and especially Peter, are stuck in this childish always, and they can never grow as long as they don't choose to.
Yeah.
Because they do figure out that the aging is at least somewhat related to wanting to stay a child, and of course, if you refuse to take responsibility, you can never grow, and you will always remain, like, childish.
Yeah.
And kind of horrible.
Yeah, it's... Because when you say it's, like, starts when things go wrong, I feel like the first... Well, I mean, you already feel like something is off for the beginning of the book, because you also have the whole situation with Nip, like, giving him the side eye and like looking at Charlie.
And Peter giving Charlie, the 5-year-old, the side eye. And you also, and it's also like obviously personified in one of the kids who's sick as fuck and is going to die soon.
Yeah.
And you have Jamie look at him and be like, there is nothing I can do. He will die, and it'll only be a matter of time, and, like, I can't save him.
Yeah. And just the nonchalant way that Peter goes about it. He's like, well, when we're back, he's gonna be dead anyway, so please not.
Peter is not, like, for Peter, everyone is just an audience to play to. He's the only one that matters. Everyone else is just there to facilitate whatever he wants at the very moment.
And I love how, so you know something's gonna blow up at some point, but it doesn't. Like, every single moment you're like, it's gonna happen. And then when it happens, when they're at the cave with the many-eyed that comes attacking them, I feel like that's the moment where it's kind of, Jamie realizes, brother, this is fucked up. Like, I had to kill the spider in order to, like, save the others. You're not even sad that one of us got bitten by the spider. And this whole part before that, it gave me such, in a good way, it gave me such an uncomfortable feeling when reading the book.
Yeah.
Because, like, oh my God, like, I was, like, turning pages, like, I don't know what's gonna happen. And she creates this feeling so beautifully. With her I love it.
You're sitting there and you're just like, there's no way there is not a train wreck somewhere here, but I can't tell where exactly it is, so I'm just waiting to start seeing, like, the bodies pile up.
Yeah, and it's like every single time they left a place, or like Jamie had to leave Charlie somewhere or something, I was like, oh my God, no. Like, something horrible
something's happening.
It's gonna happen every single time. I felt that dread. And it's like, it's so nicely done, and I feel like from that point on, when it, like, the wave breaks for the first time, it just keeps on getting worse and worse and worse, and that just it just does not get better. It's fucking a downward spiral for everyone. I also love how like the games that they play, and, like, this quarrel that they have with the pirates, like, all of this playing games, it's something that children do, right? Especially in the countryside. All the children from the neighborhood get together that live on the same street. Do you just send them off into the woods? They play with sticks and then they come back later, and you don't really know what they're doing in the woods, right? And in Lost Boy, like, playing war, for example, ends with them sometimes
just
killing each other.
Yeah.
And it's like such a, you're reading this, and as an adult, you'd look at it and go, oh my God, the fuck are they doing out there? Just killing each other. But since he has this endless supply of boys, and these children get taken at a point where, like, playing with sticks, not to death, but, you know, in a kind of violent manner is so normal, that also kind of is shocking, because at some point you're like, okay, well, yeah, they're going to play war, whatever. There's a kid dying again.
I mean, the interesting part is also that just, like, children just don't really have a concept of death until much later, because it is a complex thing to wrap your head around the fact that you as an entity can just cease to exist. It just doesn't compute for young children. And that's also, like, we also get that from Jamie's perspective when he talks about how, like, for a long time when he and Peter were just the two of them and playing around and fighting pirates, he never even thought about that this could literally kill him. Like, he was like, yeah, looking back, I could have died at any moment. Like, it was never safe. I was just lucky.
I mean, also the other way around, the killing the pirates. He only later realizes what that actually entails. For example...
And he's like, oh yeah, I just cut off their right hand, because, like, that's just my signature, man.
I'm such a funky little boy.
Yeah, it's just like, well, if they're not good enough to beat me, that's what they get. And that's like, damn.
And there's his growth as well, because previously he thinks that's a great normal thing to do, just chopping their hands off. But when Peter sets fire to their camp after the spider gets killed and they like lay the trail, it's like
he's like, it's not right.
Yeah,
it's not fair. Like there are no rules, and it's like, yeah, because it's not a fucking game. Like it's.
And that's the moment where he kind of realizes, I feel, where it starts, where he starts to develop like a moral consciousness that goes beyond being a child.
Yeah.
Not just his responsibilities, but everything else.
Wait, if there are no rules to the games, then it's not a game anymore. Mm-hmm. And if it's not a game, that means it's serious.
Yeah.
And that means I have to take it seriously, which is, something that ideally children experience while growing up. I mean, some adults don't seem to get it, but ideally usually. Most people do experience that.
Usually at some point.
They are just deprived of that because also, like, we also know that Peter wants that. He's not interested in any child that's not just there to play and to perform in whatever entertains him. He's not interested in you having opinions of your own.
Yeah.
So it's just discouraged, basically. Like, yeah, everything's a game and everything is treated as a game, and, you just do what everyone else is doing, and since everyone else is just, treating it like a game,
yeah,
what's the harm?
He does have some unwritten rules about the island in his, like, not Jamie, Peter, in his, like, the way that he treats the boys, like, don't go into the territory of the many-eyed, don't do this, don't do that. And he does get irrationally angry when people, like, not comply to those rules. But whenever he sets rules in connection to how the boys should behave with him, he just constantly changes them as well. He's like, this should be like this, and somebody does it, and he's like, well, actually, no. Why are you doing this? And that keeps the boys on their toes as well, because they're trying to, like, go for Peter's approval, and it's hard.
It's so interesting because he's just such a textbook abuser, he's also such a good horror antagonist.
Yeah.
It's like, he's so effective, especially, like, in the later parts when everything is going downhill hard and fast. And, like, Jamie's just like, this is your fault. And, like, almost literally, Peter Pan pulls out the narcissist's prayer, like, that didn't happen, and if it did, then it wasn't that bad. And if it was that bad, that's not a big deal. But if it is a big deal, then that's not my fault. And if it was my fault, then I didn't mean it. But if I did mean it, you deserved it. He literally runs down all of the abuser, like, listicle of what you're going to do if somebody, like, tries to make you take responsibility.
Honestly, in the end, Peter, to me as a character, was just chilling. Like, that moment that you said where he has this conversation with Jamie and he just goes, I never, what? What are you talking about? I was like, I had to put the book down for, like, 10 seconds or something, because I was so, like, out of it in terms. I was so angry at Jamie, at Peter. But
it's so fucking horrifying because, like, ultimately, like, Jamie has been extremely complicit in harming these children. Like, he has tried to take care of them, but he's also, like, he was also responsible for them in a way, and he has also killed a number of them himself and not really thought about it. And, like, he is willing to accept the guilt for it. And that's also part of him growing up. Like, the more he, like, looks at himself and realizes that I have done harm that I can literally never make up because all of these children are dead. And it's at least somewhat my fault. Which, I mean, I feel like he blames himself too much because, like, again, he was a child. There wasn't really, like, you can't expect that much of him. But, like, as he grows to be an adult, he's just like, this is all my fault. Like, it's... and you have Peter standing next to him as like this absolutely vicious, cruel, selfish child who's just like, well, if they died, they should have been better at not dying. How is it my fault that I brought them onto a murder island? It's crazy.
It's, yeah, just the... So I mentioned my brother reading the book, like, over my shoulder as well, and, like, I would go to bed, read before I fall asleep, and the next morning he'd be like, okay, so how did it continue? And the fun thing is that he had previously watched the Peter Pan like live action movie before he came and visited me, and he said when he watched this movie now as an adult, he got the exact impression by like of Peter that Peter is here in the book, which is he's a little asshole who has never been told no in his whole life because he's a magical child that doesn't age. And so the notion that Peter himself isn't a good person is already noticed by people who just watched the rest of the stories that are out there for Peter Pan. But yeah, the way it was utilized here was absolutely crazy. Also so when Sally comes onto the island and they find out that Sally's a girl, the temper tantrum that he throws because Sally's a girl, and like the total unhinged rage he has, it shows how like this reaction of there's something that does not go the way I want it to go, and I can't make Sally leave because nobody leaves the island again, except for killing them.
So it's one of those moments where just the mask is ripped off, because at the beginning of the book for a long time it's like, oh no, Peter's super cool and always in control and nothing can hurt him, and then he just loses his fucking mind because something doesn't go according to his like perception of what is right and wrong, and it is fucking incredible, especially because everyone else is just not paying attention to him.
Yeah.
Because like Sally's dying, like it's like, oh no, she's like extremely wounded. If we don't help her, she'll die. It's like, okay, Peter, do whatever you want. Like, this is not about you.
You're not a point of concern. Yeah, it's crazy, and for me that was such an interesting point as well, because my mind immediately went, well, he can send Sally back, obviously, right? But since that's a thing that he said he can't do or he doesn't do, he can't backtrack on that because that would undermine his authority in a sense, and it's not something he can spin in a way where it does not lead to the boys going, oh well, so people can go back in a way. Yeah,
actually, like, Sally is like a thing I do also want to talk about.
Yeah, sure.
Because, like, on the one hand, like, I get it. It is an incredibly effective shorthand to be like, oh, now there's a girl there. And that, like, changes everything. And obviously, the fact that Peter gets irrationally upset about it is also important. But I also feel like it's kind of cheap. Especially, like, as the stand-in for, like, for love and growing up in that sense. Where I'm just like, people are also gay for stuff. So, not necessarily important. But, like, I also understand that, like, it's the easy shorthand. Like, culturally, all these boys grew up with stories where it's like, okay, women are just this other, especially, like, we know, I think, like, I think the original Peter Pan story is, like, set in the early 1900s or something.
Yeah.
Like, and, like, Jamie comes from, like, even hundreds of years before that. Like, at those times, like, gender was extremely segregated. There were very clear ideas of, like, who did what and, like, what girls were supposed to be doing and what boys were supposed to be doing. So that all of these boys have the association that, like, women are other, and that's a huge change. Like, it makes sense for them. Yeah. I just personally find it, like, not super... Like, I understand why it's there, and it is effective at doing what it's doing. I just personally find it kind of cheap, especially because then, like, the moment Sally doesn't bind her breasts anymore, like they're supposedly very noticeable. She's like 13 and malnourished. I don't know where she gets noticeable, obvious breasts from when she's wearing loose clothing. I don't know why there's like attention drawn to her curves or whatever. It's like, she's fucking 13 or 12 or something. It's like, it feels so over the top in this way where I'm just like, this, like, I get it, but also like...
I know what you mean. The moment that Sally, like, came into the book, I was like, oh no. It was going so well. Is this going to become like a weird romance thing that's gonna overshadow the actual other very interesting relationships that we have in the book, which it didn't turn out to be? No, I was happy about that.
And I appreciate that. And I also understand that, like, Sally is ultimately there as, like, one, to drive more of a wedge between Peter and Jamie, and also to, like, they talk about, oh yeah, let's grow up together. Like, they like each other, but they don't really know what to do with these feelings. Yeah. And, like, she is obviously a stand-in for the future he wishes he could have. Like, when he realizes there is something beyond this island that I could have, we could run away and we could, you know, build an actual family. Like, she's a stand-in for that. Yeah. And then she gets brutally murdered because he doesn't get to get that. Like, it is, like, she is the embodiment of, like, the normal future life he wishes he could get. And that gets just brutally ripped away from him by Peter because he is now forever trapped in a never-aging, never-dying body. He's like, Peter has stolen his future by imprisoning him in a present that can never end.
Oh, and that's like, you worded that very nicely.
Yeah. So, like, I get why Sally's there. I was just like, this is so... We didn't need this heterosexuality for this. Because I also feel like Jamie already does such a good job of it. At being, like, you know, a child and Jamie slipping into the caretaker role. Where I also think it's really interesting that Sally, at one point where Jamie still doesn't remember his past, where she's like, damn, you're like a father to these boys, and he gets irrationally angry at that. Yeah. He gets so upset. He's so like, no, I'm not a father. What the fuck are you talking about? And then later, when you find out that his father was extremely abusive and just not a positive force in his life at all. That's like, damn, yeah. No wonder.
I don't remember whether it was like directly worded in the book or whether they just alluded to it, but there was also the connection of Sally being a girl and girls growing up to be mothers, and all of the boys hating or like having negative memories of their mother except for Jamie. Like, all of the boys were like, oh, my mom did, and Charlie, of course. Like, all of the other boys were like, oh, my mom was this, my mom was that. And Jamie doesn't have those feelings, and Charlie as well. And I thought that was also sort of interesting.
There is something there. I mean, it also obviously connects to the fact that at the time, women were the primary caretakers and fathers were mostly absent. So, of course, all of these would have more strong impression of their mothers. And I also think that, like, from the societal norm and expectations that a mother ought to be a caretaker, it is a greater betrayal when then your mother is abusive. Yeah. So, like, it is more cognizant for them to be like, God, my mom just sucks, and that's why I ran away. Like, my father was also bad, but, like, my mom was also not good. So, yeah.
One thing I also loved, that's, like, throughout the whole book, is the story of the little duckling and the crocodile. And at first I was like, damn, this is just a really mean, scary metaphor. He's telling him to look out for Charlie. But, like, then at the end, it's like, oh my god, there's an actual crocodile, and not just a metaphorical one, but there's still a lot of metaphors in this room, and I am uncomfortable reading this, because it's, like...
Yeah, it's so good. Like,
Peter looking at me like, you little ducklings.
And the imagery from the story and the themes, are woven into the rest of the narrative. It's so good because like there are several layers on which this works. Like the most obvious one is Peter literally sets a crocodile on Charlie.
Yeah, it's a non-metaphorical one.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's not exactly what happens in the story, but it's like, yeah, don't let the crocodile kill you. When your mommy's not there, you should be careful.
Yeah.
But then, like, the second one is that, like, which is a metaphor, like, carried throughout the book, that Peter's the crocodile, that he's watching and waiting for Jamie to, like, not be there for Charlie to then,
nip him,
like, take him and, like, hurt him. But then you also have the part where, like, Peter is also the crocodile for Jamie because while Jamie was a kid and living in the normal world, he was watching and waiting for the right moment. And when his mom wasn't there, because Peter made sure she wasn't there, then he could steal Jamie away.
That was, I mean, I expected this from pretty early on that Peter had something to do, obviously, with the taking of Jamie. But when we actually got to the point and we get to see it and we hear it, what he did to Jamie's mother, it still makes you go like, fuck that little kid, honestly.
The really cool part about it is that the book opens with the nightmare of Jamie remembering like the silver gleam of the knife in the dark and like the blood on his hands, and he wakes up and he notices the red fruit in Peter's hands and the silver gleam of the knife, like it's there at the like second page, like it's there from the very beginning.
Oh my god,
immediately there.
Oh my god, yeah, I mean, yeah, because you reread it. I only read I read it recently, I only read like the milestone scenes kind of. And when I remember when I read it the first time, I thought that scene that you said was more like he's just so disturbed by it that he connects the red fruit. But but
it's like,
Peter
it's literally
like
that.
His mom.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And there's also I guess I mentioned to you I have this like fun pet theory.
Yes, give us the theory.
Which also in some way ties into the crocodile metaphor.
Oh yeah.
So we know the island is magical, and that at least on some level Peter is connected to it.
Yeah.
So I think you could make an argument for like that the island basically made him, like it made everything else magical that's on it through its inherent magic, and that he is basically like the lure of an anglerfish. He is there to bring the island more blood. Like, on the one hand, to dazzle kids and bring them there to die so that the magic can, still work and to feed the island. Like, as is also mentioned, the many-eyed, the giant spiders, there's always too many. There's never enough food, and the boys are never allowed to kill any of them. Because, like, Peter's part of the island, and he makes the rules, and you're not allowed to, like, destroy anything that's part of the magical aspect of the island. Yeah. You're just there for food. But also, on the other hand, like, Peter doesn't just bring in the kids. It's also the pirates that keep coming back to the island because they think there's some magical fountain of youth there because Peter's there. And they also keep dying. And they also keep leaving their blood on the island.
But isn't it also that the pirates just literally cannot leave the island?
No, that's just Jamie with the curse.
That's just Jamie in the end. Okay, never mind.
It's like that's then for him. But like at the beginning, they can leave. I mean, it's mentioned several times. They bring back like women to rape. Sometimes like they bring in like material and they go out raiding and stuff. So they can leave, but they keep coming back because like Peter's like there and like there's something magical about him and like this eternal youth that keeps them coming back to also like feed themselves to the island over and over. So in the story of the crocodile, Peter is not just the crocodile, but he is also the reflection in the water.
Oh.
He is in the shape of a boy who looks like a friend, and you want to stay with him.
And you want to save him as well.
And you do, and like, at the moment you realize it's too late, the island is already killing you.
Dang, that's a good fairy. I like it. Yeah,
it's also because, like, there's, like, Peter Pan is so, at least in the story, he's so fey. He is such he's, like, almost, like, a force of nature in the shape of a boy. He's not real enough to have, like, proper emotions, to build, like, real relationships, but he's a good enough approximation that looks good enough in the light that it keeps boys coming in.
He's sort of...
And it's also, like, he's bound to the rules of the island. Like, the island doesn't want anyone to leave because it needs the sustenance to sustain its magical properties. So none of the kids are allowed to leave, even though technically they totally could, because the entrance is right there. Like, Jamie goes through it regularly to, like, go and choose boys with Peter, right? Like, you could just leave, but you're not allowed to, because the island doesn't want you to either.
Yeah. He's like a conduit to the sort of magic that comes from it. But I love the description of saying he's sort of fey, because those exactly are the vibes. Like, he's mysteriously sitting in a tree, and then he's, like, jumping down from it. Later, the flying comes to it as well. And he has the jealousy for it. The jealousy and the mischief.
Like, he's like, he's kind of part of nature, but he's also kind of human, but he's only human in a few respects, and they're dialed up so much that it also, like, he's so squarely in the uncanny valley. It's crazy. Like, he's so close to being like a real boy, but he'll never get there.
It's just, I just remembered, because I was, like, subconsciously thinking of, what other moments make him feel like he has the shiny new toy syndrome with the boys, is the moment where there's a couple of scenes where he starts befriending Charlie, because he's like, all right, if Jamie doesn't want to play with me, I'm gonna play with Charlie, and that will make Jamie angry and maybe make Jamie want to play with me again.
Yeah, and Jamie's scared to leave Charlie alone with me, so, like, he's gotta come then.
Yeah.
He can't leave if I have Charlie.
And it also makes it more difficult for Jamie to tell, or, like, to convince Charlie that Jamie isn't a good guy. Because Charlie's like, I don't know, I don't think that Peter would do that. And Jamie's like, no, please. Please stay away from Peter. But Peter knows that he has Jamie by the balls by doing that.
Yeah.
And it's just, he's such a little... I don't even want to say he's such a little shit, because we usually use that as, like, an endearment on this podcast. We're like, oh, this character is such a little shit. Peter is genuinely a scary character. Like, I would never want to meet a Peter like that.
Yeah, no, he is, like, that makes him such a good horror antagonist, especially, like, I feel like right at the end, it's also so, like, effective. Like, we've spent the entire book learning that there's something so deeply wrong with him. Yeah. And then you have the end where it's like, you can't even kill him. He's not real enough to die. He's not enough of a real boy, so you could actually kill him.
You constantly have this feeling of otherness about him, and then Jamie starts noticing, can Peter fly? Then Charlie tells him, he taught me how to fly. He showed me there's a fairy. Okay. And then slowly, but there's like this power climb that you knew was always there with Peter, that he has, but it's suddenly coming to light. And then the scene at the beach where he's just floating over them, there's blood everywhere because Sally just died. and all this stuff. There's the fire that has been previously set to the field with the many-eyed and shit, and he just destroys the boat willy-nilly because he's like, I just don't want to let you leave, hee. And he's doing all of this like full out in the open, being batshit crazy. That I think really makes you think, like, oh my god. I genuinely thought Jamie was gonna die until I realized, no, he's Captain Hook. He has to
No, he is Captain Hook. He can't die. I think that another fascinating thing is that he's like, Jamie is his possession to him.
He's the first.
So the moment Jamie has something that's his or that he wants to be like for himself, Peter has to take it. Which I think is also just straight up a line in the book where it's like, yeah, if I have anything besides Peter, then he will take it away. And it's such a strong moment where in the arena then Peter cuts off his hand and he literally takes Jamie's like signature from him and turns it into his own. Yeah. And I was like, damn, yeah. You can't have shit in Detroit, like literally, like you can't, you're not allowed to keep anything but Peter.
It's
I didn't actually, like, I read it like 4 years ago, but I hadn't remembered that Charlie actually survives. For some reason, I just assumed that Charlie would probably die. I was so surprised at the end when Charlie wasn't dead. I was like, damn, that kid really made it. Crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
The first time I read it, considering how much death there is in the book, I might have been a bit like naive in thinking that Sally and Jamie and Charlie were all gonna survive. I thought all the other kids would die, but not them. And then I was like, when Sally dies, I was shocked, but I was like, well, yeah. I mean, yeah. It was bound to happen. Somebody has to die. And I also was very scared then that Charlie would die. But yeah, thematically, I think making Charlie die as well might have been, like, it would have worked, obviously. But I kind of don't mind. Or let's just say I don't think the story suffers by Charlie surviving.
No, I also don't think that. I don't actually know, like, I'm not a Peter Pan fan or whatever. I don't know like the lore or whatever. But I know that Captain Hook has like an assistant or like his goon or whatever. I looked it up, but I don't know if his name is Charlie. Okay.
It has a different name. Because I was wondering, because I had from the cartoon, I had the same thing in my mind, right? We have Captain Hook and then a little one with the glasses and stuff. Yeah. But he has a different name. So that's not Charlie. I also tried to see if there's a nod in the cartoon, but also wasn't one.
This just reminded me, because that was also the fucking crocodile metaphor and the fact that like Peter is the crocodile in the metaphor, and in the animated version the crocodile is what takes Hook's hand. Yeah. And it's like and you know, and like and he's like afraid of the crocodile but he's also hunting it, and it's like, damn.
There's I sent you a screenshot from an interview from her, but today I looked at stuff because I was trying to see, or I always try to see when we do these videos, if there's like extra content from the author and extra insight. And what Christina Henry did say is that with Lost Boy, she had to take a little bit more caution of the whole universe in itself, because with Alice she was like, it's a series, it's loosely based, whatever, I can take the story. But with Lost Boy, like on purpose being a prequel to the Peter Pan story, she had to like take some things into consideration. So maybe that with the crocodile wasn't just being, there's a crocodile in the Peter Pan story as well, but maybe that was also a consideration where she was like, well, it would make sense for him to like later be scared by crocodiles, because I'm gonna make a crocodile kill his friend and try to eat his other friend. So maybe that's also part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume if you're doing a retelling like that, you would just kind of, just get the vibes of what's out there. And if, like, the crocodile is already, like, very present in the other parts of the story, it's like, obviously it also needs to be present here.
Yeah.
I also love that Peter Pan in this is not dressed in green, but he's wearing bleached, like, deer hide, like, and it's white, and it's like, I feel like that adds so much to the creepiness factor of him. Like,
ghost.
He's not a silly little boy in, like, a green outfit who, like, dances through the trees. No. He's already wearing dead skin. He's like a ghost.
Especially because, I mean, the other boys are also kind of sometimes just wearing pants or, have like an assortment of clothes. Yeah. But they usually have some clothes that kind of go with their character. Like Jamie has the coat, and then the others have certain weapons that they scourged from the journeys to the pirates, and everyone from them has something that's so personalized. But Peter doesn't, because his boys are his, little trinkets that he has.
Accessory.
He doesn't need any flourishes to his outfits or to his character in that kind of term.
He's so recognizable anyway, so it doesn't. It doesn't.
It's obvious if you have a group who would be Peter from just the visuals. It's like, that's that guy over there. But I love when books give me certain feelings, like just not just reading something and there's the story is horrible and because of that I have an uncomfortable feeling, but when I'm like actually getting like the bodily reaction from the queasiness and the uncomfortable, she manages it so well. And also the ending of the book with them growing old and Jamie just always having to be there because he was cursed, and just this unhappy like realization that you feel and know that Peter, for him, it was just another time in paradise. I mean, he lost his Jamie, but there's lots of other boys.
But also, like, he didn't lose Jamie. Jamie's still there
He's
to
still
play
there,
with him. Because
he
Jamie
lost
can't
his
ever
Jamie.
leave.
Yeah.
But now the game is just, like, a slightly different one.
It changed a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, now they're on opposing teams, but it's still like, hey, gonna go and annoy the pirates for a bit, I think that's also, like, such a poignant moment where you are at the end, and, like, Jamie's like, and sometimes I watch him, and he, like, lets the other kids fly with him, and it makes me so fucking angry. Like, I see red, but I also know it's not their fault, and there would be no point in killing more children than I already have. It's like, damn. He's traumatized, obviously. Yeah, no, he's so fucking traumatized.
It's such a nice addition to like make his character such a round character to begin with, because while he has now grown up, and I mean, we don't know how much time, is spent during the last couple of pages where he like explains being now an adult pirate and stuff, but we still have to remember that he has been a boy for like such a long time, that just because he has recently grown up doesn't mean that those feelings that he still has or that he had for such a long time aren't still like inside of him. And
but it is also that, like, he's literally not allowed to move on.
Yeah, mentally and physically.
He's still not allowed to age, and he's still not allowed to leave.
Yeah.
Like, anyone else can, but he can't.
It's just... It's so good. Like, with the other books, we usually, like, there's so many bad things you can rave about and, like, make fun of.
Yeah,
but
no,
with this one,
it's just so good. It's so cohesive because, like, it knows exactly what it's doing. And, like, it does it so well. I also just, like, I was looking over my notes, and there's, like, another thing that I love about it where it's like, yeah, Peter goes and promises these boys that they can be young forever, But really, the only thing it means to not grow old is that you die young. Because none of them actually live very long.
That's
the
true.
only way to avoid becoming an adult is to die
At some point, yeah.
Kid.
When Peter's unhappy. Ooh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah. And I feel like this is like sometimes when people are like, God, I want more books written by like people the age of the characters or whatever. And it's like, but that wouldn't be very good, because I think you need an adult's perspective on this to be able to write about it effectively. Like, you can value your childhood, and like, it's cool to be free, but it is a very accurate like presentation of what it looks like to be a child. Like, if you don't take responsibility, you are inherently selfish and cruel a lot of the time. And if you don't learn to respect other people and like realize like what harm you do and what harm you can do, and to like act responsibly, then yeah, you can't really be an adult.
Yeah.
And like, you don't know what you're losing. Like, it's like if you're a child and you're like, oh, I'm just, who cares, I'll die young, I don't want to be an adult. And it's like, you'll never get to know what it is you're actually missing out on.
And what you're actually wishing for.
You don't understand, like, you don't even understand the tragedy of what you've lost if you throw it away.
Yeah.
And I think that's also, like, powerful because, like, all the boys could have a future, but Peter doesn't, so he doesn't care. And they emulate Peter, but like, unlike him,
they can't.
They could have had something else. They could have had something better, but now they can't.
I love the thought of, what I loved was this perceived notion of Jamie that Peter saves boys, in terms of he gets them out of bad situations. And, with Charlie, he's going, okay, he's pretty young. Like, he's a bit too young to be taken. But that changes into, well, if Charlie apparently had a mom who loved him, how many boys did Peter actually save? Or did he, like, kidnap them? And that switch from we should all be thankful to Peter for getting us out and to giving us this place and for having us be young forever, to this man, boy, entity actually robbed us of everything just out of pure selfishness.
I mean, I think that is also a thing where it's just like such a good representation of abuse, because like in some respects it is better. Like, yeah, if you are going hungry, like, as a Victorian child on the streets, and your choice is to, like, lose your hands in the factory or, like, starve on the street, it's like, it's not really that much worse to live somewhere where at least you have food on the regular and fresh air and, like, friends, and you don't get abused directly, but you are still, like, that doesn't mean it's that much better.
And I mean, we have to consider that they don't get the food and the shelter by Peter. They get that because of Jamie.
Yeah, because Jamie's there.
So Peter isn't saving them out of the goodness of his heart. He's saving them,
I mean, Jamie does realize that. He's like, they're just there for entertainment. And that's just how Peter is, He doesn't have a long attention span. He just, like... Yeah, if a boy's dead, then they can't be hype men for him anymore, so he doesn't give a shit. And I think that's also something, like, extremely powerful, that, like, Jamie does bury all of them.
Yeah.
Like, by himself. It's like, damn.
There's also... I mean, that at some point Tinkerbell is gonna be in the story, or, like, the fairy... But I was also feeling some dread because you don't get to see her for such a long part of the book. Yeah. And then where there is this scene when Jamie checks out the tree to see like where he has to go, if he still finds the way. And there's this, like, he knows he's being watched and there's this little light and stuff. And I was like, oh no. No. And you know what's gonna happen. You know exactly what's going to happen. And he leaves Charlie with Peter because he can't do anything else because, you know, Peter's starting to his thing with Charlie, and then he goes to the tree and you know exactly why it happened and how it happened. But for Jamie it's still such a such a tragedy. But as a reader, you're sitting there, you know exactly why this happened and how it happened.
I actually also think it's fascinating that it wasn't just that the tree was, you know, gone now, or that the hole had been filled up, but it was like somebody dragged the tree like in half, and also that like whatever the hole is filled with, it's fucking bleeding. And it's like, damn, what the fuck happened here? Like,
somebody let out their rage on this tree. And I mean, it's pretty obvious who it was, but that whole, like, just the fact for Jamie, he was being watched by somebody was tracking him even though he was extremely careful, and the person, Peter in this instance, who did this thing to this tree knows everything, probably. That's what Jamie has to accept in this moment, and that's why he like starts panicking and runs after Peter, and then he sees them in the field. But it's like, I love that one as well. This aspect of knowing, due to the pre-knowledge of the story itself, like knowing there's an unknown factor here we haven't seen yet. Yeah,
it's like, damn, what the fuck. And like, I also, there's another thing where it's like, after you know, all the boys almost are dead and Jamie has become Captain Hook, he mentions that like Peter like brings people over like by air, and like he lets some of them leave again. And like, I was wondering if like the island had lost a lot of its magic because all the boys almost died at once, so there was no one there to believe in it actively, but also all of the fucking spiders are dead, which were like a huge part of the island. Like they were
the ecosystem,
a huge component of like what was magical about it. But not only them, but the fairies are also gone.
Right, because they live in the grass.
Maybe like the island just has like way less sway over Peter now. Now like, if like it's fine if there are less sacrifices because like it has to sustain much less now.
Maybe. I saw it more as a taunt towards Jamie, as in, you like weren't allowed to fly with me, the children fly with me, see, now I'm so well behaving, I'm sending them back when they want to.
I mean, sometimes I still kill some of them, but like,
sometimes, but you know, sometimes that even happens when the pirates attack, you know, so like, it's kind of your fault, buddy. And it's so I felt like it was more that. It could be with the island as well, but for me it was mainly the middle finger to Jamie, of going, look how well behaved I am now. Ta-da.
But yeah, I do wonder, because like Peter's so intrinsically connected to the island, whether it's like, you know, the only way to kill him would be if you destroyed everything that makes the island itself. I think also like there's no way he could ever manage that. So like he's doomed to forever just like stay.
Yeah. I feel like one thing that could maybe work
until eventually like somebody's like military shows up in like 100 years.
Or like set everything on fire. It worked well with the spiders and with the grass. Obviously, the fire might not hold well onto the very humid jungle plants and, you know, the area around the mermaids probably. But I was thinking of, oh, well, we've set the grass on fire. Maybe we can set everything else on fire as well. But I wonder whether that would work. Otherwise, I think you would have to bomb the island to oblivion.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's like, listen, Jamie, it obviously sucks that you feel like you have to be there forever, but don't worry. In the distant future, like in 100 years, if you can hold out until then, People will come and people will do garbage to your island. Don't worry about it.
The question, he can't leave the island, but he can obviously get on his boat as a pirate itself.
Yeah.
Like, maybe he could, like, flag down a ship and then, like, enter them as a pirate, kick the person off.
Honestly, I feel like he wouldn't even have to, but because there's no way pirates who used to come there didn't have logs of, like, the island existing, and some, like, intelligence service or whatever would check if, like, hey, if there's an island, who knows what's on there, and maybe we can use it as a base or whatever. Like, listen, Jamie, it's fine. Don't worry about it. It is horrific at the moment, but at some point, modern military equipment will make its way to the island. Don't worry about it.
It's gonna be like one of those drone videos from those secluded islands that have the indigenous native people living there throwing spears at the drones flying over it. It's like Peter just taking one of those drones and like just ripping it apart. And then the military going, Jesus fucking Christ, that's a feral kid on that island.
They're like, damn, there's people. Wow.
Let's just drop something on there.
No, they'd be like, oh, we can work with that. And then they turn up on the island and, like, they're like, damn, mermaids are real. We gotta get one for Area 51 or whatever.
Maybe. But, yeah, I honestly don't know what to say anymore except for just gush about the fact that it made me feel bad in the best way.
Yeah, I think it's so good also because it just commits to the fact that it's not, that there is no happy ending possible.
Yeah.
Like, it knows from the beginning what it wants to be and it sticks to that, which I can respect a lot because I feel like a lot of retellings can fall into the trap of wanting to fix things, which is not bad per se. But I do think, especially if you're gonna do a villain origin story, you gotta commit to the bit and make their life shit. Like, you can't... Yeah. Like, it's just, like, there is no happy ending for them.
That's true. Well, on that one hand, and on the other, I feel like tonally, looking at the story and how it develops, having a happy end in there... Or even a neutral one, where it's like, well, we've lost people, but at least Jamie is now on a boat away from the island.
I think the thing is also that, like, you couldn't, in good conscience, let Jamie leave at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Jamie's, like, a boy who fell out of time. Like, there is no way you can just bring him into, like, the modern world. Like... This is, like, if you think about it from, like, a writing perspective thematically, it's just not an option. Like, nobody leaves, and that's how it is. Like, yeah. The moment, like, I feel like the moment the tree is blocked, like,
It's not gonna end.
He's not, they're not getting off the island. They're not getting away until Peter dies, and Peter won't die, so...
The whole thing with, oh my god, yes, let's get to the boat and let's, like, run away. I was like... It's not gonna work, obviously. I mean, you don't know that. You try to get to the boat, but as a reader, it's like...
But I mean, I feel like also you could feel that Jamie knew it wouldn't work. Because Jamie was, like, way more concerned with, like, keeping people around him and making sure they were safe than even, like, trying the most effective way to get off the island. Because, like, I feel like deep down he knew. Like,
he's not gonna leave it.
Let him go.
Yeah. I mean, there's also the thing where he says about the tunnel underneath the tree that the first time he went through, he was convinced that Peter was gonna, like, hurt him in some way. And that might have been also a thing where Jamie thinks, can he even go through without Peter? Right? The way underneath the tree. Is that even a possibility? What if he and Charlie and Sally try to go through and they're just gonna choke to death?
Yeah, there's no way to get out. Yeah.
So there's maybe also that thing connected to it, that he's like, I know I'm not gonna make it out, and even if I go into this hole, there's a high chance that Peter's not gonna let me leave.
I think it's also a very good choice that, like, Peter is not, like, omnipotent. Like, Peter has enough weakness where you feel like where, like, the spark of hope is there that, like, hey, maybe you could win. Yeah. Maybe, if you're smart enough, if you play well enough, like, then you can win. But then it's like, yeah, but Peter will just change the rules.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah, if there were rules, maybe you could, but you're not the one who makes the decisions around you.
Yeah, but that's the truth, though.
Yeah, but I feel like it would be a lot less, like, scary if, like, Peter was, like, more obviously in control. Because, like, then it gets boring if it's just like, oh, you know, Peter, like, Peter can control everything, but it's like, no, he can't.
If he was, like, a game master,
just
that would be
to make sure you can't, like, control your own future either.
Yeah, if he was like a game master, that would make it less scary in terms of it's super obvious that he controls everything. But since he's more like an element of surprise, so to speak.
Yeah.
It makes it interesting. It's like a game show where he isn't the game master, but he's like the assistant that goes, oh, by the way, for the next round, let's change the rules a little bit. So it's not like he has the agency over the players, but he's like, well, I'm just gonna change the game so that you'll lose anyways. So he's like a person you can't win against because he defines what winning is.
Yeah, it really is just like, well, you don't have to play his game. And it's like, well, on the island you do have to. Yeah. Like, if you went to the real world, then maybe, like, you could. But I think it's also interesting that, like, Peter can't stay in the normal world. Like, he has to go back to the island. Yeah. And, like, that does make me wonder if, like, ultimately the island is just, like, you know, a death sentence. Ultimately, like, it is removed from the real world, and, like, once you set foot on there, like, it doesn't matter what you do. Either you have to come back until you die there, or you just never leave. Because, like, the pirate captains, like, yeah, you know, they keep going away, but they also keep coming back. Yeah. And they keep getting killed. And, like, the crews keep changing, but, like, you know?
It doesn't... Like, it's a constant in their lives.
Yeah.
To a certain point.
It's like it changes you just by being there, which makes you incompatible with the rest of the world, which means you have no choice but to go back.
One thing I knew it wasn't gonna get covered because it adds to the mystery, and also it's like most of the solutions would be some convoluted weird shit. But I really would like to know the relationship between Peter and the island. Like, was Peter the first human that happened to strand there? Is Peter like a spirit, like a sprite or something, and it just manifests as a human? It's just, I don't know. I would really like to know, but then again, I don't want to because it would ruin the book. Probably.
Yeah, I think it's fun to theorize about, but it's not relevant. Yeah. I think, like when I think about my pet theory, I think it would be interesting if, like, you know, the island was there and, like, at some point somebody is stranded there because, you know, that can happen. And, like, that's where it gets the concept of, like, what a person is. And then, like, at some point it just, like, from inertia, like, created something similar, and that's what Peter is.
Like a little seed.
Peter's like, again, like, he's there to make other people come there. So, you know, it's like, damn, okay. Gonna make something person-shaped. Something non-threatening at first glance. It's like, well, it's just a boy. What could he possibly do? Like, either it's a child you can ignore, or he's just a friend, you know?
It's... Yeah, it's a good thing we don't know. I feel like especially in horror and stuff, it's like
Yeah, no, it's unnecessary. Like, it doesn't do anything for the story. It's like, it's not like there isn't an easy literal answer, because what he's there as a representation. He's not there as a literal thing you can like fight or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, it's when it's like, oh, this horror antagonist, like, why can't we just, like, you know, throw a bomb at it or whatever? And it's like, well, I mean, there are horror stories where he can, but, like, sometimes it's not about that.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, like, sure, you can, like, think about it if it's fun for you, but it feels like you're missing the point of the story if this is what you think about after reading it.
Yeah, that's true. It's, I didn't expect it to be as scary, to be honest. But, I mean, I'm not an avid horror reader, so I guess that's why I didn't expect it, because for me as I'd say average person, average reader, I associate horror with something else in terms of, I feel like when I pick up a horror book, I know it's a horror book.
Yeah.
Which with Lost Boy, I wasn't expecting. I was like, I'm gonna pick up horror. So I was positively surprised. But, yeah.
I think it's also because it's like more on the psychological side, because like the things that happen are not, you know, on a general, like, if you think about it, they're not that bad. Like, sure, people die, but like the horror of it is the inevitability and the fact that there is no escape, and the dawning realization that basically like you've deluded yourself for like forever. And now that you see like the reality of it, it's so much worse than anything you could have ever imagined.
Yeah, I feel like the emotion is like more like terror in a sense.
Yeah.
Like the realization of, oh my god, like constant panic attack for the whole rest of the book.
There's the underlying feeling of anxiety, but like there isn't like a monster, really. Yeah. Like the monster is Peter, but he's not a typical horror antagonist. He's not the kind of monster. Like, it's just not written that way because it's also more of, like, a character-driven piece. It's not, it's not about, like, Jamie has to fight the monster because that's the only way he could ever be free. But the story is not about Jamie fighting the monster. The story is about Jamie understanding that he can be free.
Yeah.
And then the tragedy of it is that even though he knows what to do, it is not possible to do.
For him, yeah.
Yeah, so he's stuck forever.
There's just I forgot what I was saying. It's the whole synopsis of Jamie, like, starting from I'm feeling fine to just realizing or questioning everything that happens to him that is enough to be scary. And the way that Jamie describes all of this with this childish lens and this, like, throughout the book, I forgot that he was that young. And when they mentioned, oh, he grows and, like, he's starting to get a bit of stubble, and I was like, oh, he's a full-blown teenager now. And then Sally's like, oh yeah, you look like you're 13 now. And I was like, shit.
Yeah, you look like 14 or whatever. And that's like, damn, yeah.
Like, yeah, of course. You know, usually testosterone comes in and you start to grow your first facial hair when you get 14. And that's still a baby. Like, it's still a little boy. And also, I like the fact that at the end Nod grows up a lot faster than Jamie. Like, Jamie looks like blinks sort of, and then Nod is suddenly this bearded guy
Yeah.
who's like already there. So it feels like maybe the growth of Jamie is like staggered in a sense, because he's still holding on to it in a way.
Yeah.
And Nod has just completely like accepted it after his, in quotation mark, brothers die. He's like, well, that's it, you know.
I mean, I think one of them was his real brother.
Was it?
I think they were twins, weren't they?
It felt
they were
like
originally twins, and then the third kid comes in.
Maybe it was that.
Yeah, I'm pretty
Nod
sure
and
Nod
Fog.
and Fog were actually like twins and actual like siblings.
Then it was his real brother.
Yeah.
That was one part of the book I didn't get, because it was like, oh, they're brothers, but then it was like a weird little muddly thing with lots of sentences. And then Jamie is like, well, yeah, I called them brothers. I was like, okay, so are they?
You know, I think they are.
You think they are?
And
They probably
it's
are.
like, damn, yeah, they're like one of the only ones who've made it very long, and it's like, damn,
Mm-hmm.
that's crazy.
I don't know if they were the ones right after Jamie. I don't know if they say that.
I think it's like they were one of the first one. Like they were pretty early on. Like they've been there
Yeah.
a long time. I think it's also like interesting that like they've been there a long time, but Jamie doesn't openly have a particularly close relationship with them either.
Yeah.
It's like that's probably the reason why they made it this long. And it's like,
Oh,
damn,
yeah.
They're
That's a
like
good...
self-involved enough that Peter never like set up a situation where they could like die.
Yeah, because they're not involved enough with each other.
Yeah, they don't like draw Jamie away from him in a meaningful way, so like it's fine.
Well, maybe. I mean, there's also the animosity that Jamie has with some of the other boys, like mostly Nip. That is born out of the jealousy that Peter likes Jamie so much and not Nip. That was also just
Yeah.
interesting to me. But yeah, I don't feel like I have any sort of big thing to contribute anymore, except for saying that I really like this book, to be honest.
Yeah, I think we've like gone through like
At least, yeah, we've gone through all the points I had
everything.
on my roster.
Yeah, I think looking through my notes, yeah, I think that's like... Oh yeah, there was also one thing that was just... That's not directly related to the book, but like
Oh, yeah, sure.
there are a good number of reviews that are just like, oh wow, now that I know like the truth behind Peter Pan, I'm looking at the original or the Disney movie differently, and it's just like, girl, you're so bad at understanding fiction. Like, this is not the truth. There is no truth. Peter Pan's not real. Like, this is just a dark interpretation of a concept. This is not like a reveal or anything. Like, just because it's edgier and darker doesn't mean it's more true than any other Peter Pan interpretation. Like,
I mean, I could imagine somebody like not being able to. So there's the Peter Pan stans, right? There's the people like the Disney adults and stuff.
Yeah.
People who spend a lot of time with this character and idolize him in a sense. And when you find a piece of media or fiction that portrays this character differently, but in a way that's coherent with how he has been previously described, maybe that does like change something in their perception. And if they were to watch the movie again, they go, oh well, you know, this does give it a different flavor. But in terms of saying, oh, now I know the truth, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, so like it's just like, God, that's so stupid. It's like, that's not. But yeah, that's more my beef with people who like review it. I'm just like, no, shut up. Like,
yeah,
you're wrong.
I also like the way that you kind of stumbled in the beginning over it's a retelling. Because I was wondering, can you say it's a retelling? In an interview, she says it's a retelling, but I feel
it's
like
a good,
you're
like,
not
retelling
retelling
is like
anything.
a marketing term. But like, I feel like since it doesn't actually span the part of the
exactly.
story that I don't know from when the original Peter Pan story is. I assume somewhere in the 19th century or whatever. I don't know exactly. But, like, since this isn't actually about Wendy and all of that, I feel like it's not accurate to call it a retelling. It is way more of a retelling than other things she's written that are, like, adjacent to the ideas. Like, The Girl in Red is obviously inspired by Little Red Riding Hood, but it is so far removed from the fairy tale that you can't really... It's not a retelling. There there are things that are, like, equivalents to the wolf that you're like, oh, this could be, like, the wolf, or this could also be the wolf. Like, these are just dangers that exist. But, like, it's not accurate to say it's a retelling. Same with, like, The Mermaid. It's like, sure, it's about a mermaid, but it's not a retelling of any, like, and it cribs from other mermaid stories, but it's not any specific retelling.
So the first time the story came up from Peter Pan is in 1902. So
1902. So, yeah,
right,
so, like,
at the
early
right
20th century. Makes sense, from the aesthetics that I, like, know of the movie. The animated one, No, it makes sense. Yeah, like... But yeah, I don't... Like, you can call it a retelling if you want to, but I feel like since it's more of a backstory for the villain, it's like, it's not really retelling the same story. It's about the same thing, certainly, but it's...
I mean, thinking about the Peter Pan story and how it's for other people, like the whole retelling and stuff like this, Peter Pan has become such a pop culture thing as well.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of how it's being used. There's the Peter Pan syndrome that is like a term to call people who are like totally not grown up as an adult, like the lack of responsibility and like the behaving like the infantilization of their own life, which kind of describes the more villainous view of Peter Pan, like we have in Lost Boy very well.
That's true.
So the story itself, I feel like calling it a retelling is...
Yeah, I feel like a lot of things that the Disney company decided to adapt have unfortunately been put through the ringer. In a pop cultural sense. Like, obviously, Alice in Wonderland was already popular before, and there are a lot of reimaginings and, like,
the video games,
for example, that are entirely unrelated to the Disney version, but I do also blame it for being so big in the cultural, like, consciousness, because, like, again, I have read Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, and I was like, I don't get it. Like, the appeal of it is obviously, like, the decades and decades of artistic work that's already been put into things that are related to it, but the actual, like, stories, they're very short, and they're just kind of like, yeah, sure, like, some of the poetry is, like, supposedly well done from what's it called, like, from, like,
an artistic view,
just, like, quality. If you're like, okay, this is what makes poems, like, this is obviously well written, but, like, there's stories about dreams Alice is having. They're, like, disjointed. A lot of the things don't really connect to anything. They're just, like, wild imaginings, and just having read the originals and seeing what people have done with it, I'm just like, what the fuck did you do with this? None of it, this is, where did you even get this? But they get it from, you know, the rest of pop culture, and everyone throws something else in. And, like, I feel like Peter Pan has also suffered a bit from this. Like, I think especially also Disney has made, like, stuff where, like, Peter Pan is now an adult or whatever, and his children go to never... Something like that. Like, there's a lot of stuff.
A movie,
Yeah, and dude, I have seen, like, also on the Goodreads page, there are so many, like, Hook origin story stuff. Like,
Really?
and a good chunk of them are, like, romance stuff, where it's like, okay, I don't need to know about this. That sounds like a bad idea, but it's, like, really funny to me. Like,
Wow.
I don't, like, yeah, because, like, he's a sexy pirate, you know?
Sexy pirate. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I feel like, but I feel like with considering the Hook thing, it's something that happens to any villain. I feel like especially male villains,
for sure.
that there's just media about it because the character itself is so interesting. For, I don't know, I guess it's something with
Some
human
people,
psychology that makes you go that route. So I'm not surprised. I'm especially not surprised because in the first movie, or in the movie that I remember, I'm just looking at the huge list. 2003. Jason Isaacs plays Captain Hook, and I mean that you know, it's an attractive man. So I feel like maybe a lot of people watched this movie in 2003, and kind of was like their first weird fluttering in their stomach.
Yeah, they got attached to it, whatever. Yeah, no, yeah, it's, I don't think I would, like, I think a lot of other, like, Hook origin stories would look very uninteresting next to this, because it's such a good take on it.
Yeah.
That I feel like a lot of it would probably look very pale and just uninteresting in comparison.
That's true. It's true. But I like looking at, like, stories that have sort of become, let's say, property of the public in that sense.
Yeah.
In terms of that, so many artists and people have kind of taken their dig at how they would portray it. I love it when those stories get a constant new perspective added onto it, and I feel like Lost Boy is a quite interesting and very valid perspective to Peter Pan. So I actually do quite enjoy it. It is unfortunate if one very popular media that is connected to the story, like the Disney movie, kind of takes precedent in the whole story itself. But
I definitely, like, I enjoy retellings. I don't think they're bad, but I feel like it's something that does bother me is that often, especially in regards to fairy tales, if it's a fairy tale Disney has put their hands on, you can guarantee if this was written by some American writer, it's gonna be so Disney-fied, because unfortunately a lot of them just don't do much research. They're like, oh, I watched the movie as a kid, so I know about it. And it's like, well, it's a well-beloved fairy tale. None of the like movies that Disney has done are made from fairy tales that are, like, obscure. Like, these are well-known. There are so many versions of them already out there. Please look at more than just one thing. Please do something interesting with it, but a lot of them refuse.
Honestly, I felt like gaslit when I talked about this with somebody, because they never read the full Snow White fairy tale.
The Grimm's fairy tale.
Yeah, because I was like, well, there's a thing with the comb, and then with the belt, and then only in the end she gets the apple, and they were like, what are you talking about? It's like, what do you mean? Like, there's the toxic comb and the belt that's too, like, and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then I had to, like, whip up the wiki page of Snow White, and they said, like, oh, that didn't happen in the Disney movie, and I was like, ah.
I was like, yeah, of course.
Well, obviously.
It's also just like that. Obviously, the Grimm's version are also not, like, the real version or whatever.
Yeah, of
the
course.
Grimms were like had some real problems with women that they have they have imposed on the fairy tales that they collected. These are not like the pure original versions, but at least they commit to the bit. Like, at least they fucking hate women and they're willing to do like gruesome shit to them, and they're like, yeah, stepmothers suck so bad.
I feel for every stepmother on this planet that had to deal with children being conditioned to hate stepmothers simply by children movies always villainizing stepmothers.
And that's like, it is understandable where it comes from. Like, statistically speaking, for a long time, your children did have worse survival chances if they had a step-parent. Especially if that step-parent also had their own children. Because, like, if there's not enough food to go around, they're gonna pick favorites, and that's probably gonna be their own children. And, like, it's not, like, an insane statistical difference, but, like, it is noticeable enough that, of course, people were like, ooh, stepmothers are, like, not great for children, which is fine. But also, there are also more than enough Grimm's fairy tales where the straight-up normal parents just fucking hate the kids. I mean, look at Hansel and Gretel.
Yeah, I was about to
those
say
parents
that.
are just like, fuck them kids, which I do understand, but also, like, not good parenting.
It's true.
But yeah, no, it's, I feel like after reading Lost Boys, like, I feel like it would be difficult to find something that also deals with Peter Pan that feels quite as good, because it's so well written, and also it's so genuine in expressing what it wants to be about.
Yeah.
It doesn't half-ass anything. It's like, being a lost boy sucks. Like, this is, like, horrible for, like, it commits to the bit, which I feel like a lot of mediocre books fail at really leaning into what they're about. They're like, oh, I don't want to be cringe and over the top, and it's like, no, you need to really explore what you want to talk about, because that makes it interesting.
Yeah, just go full at it. I feel like some books also have the problem of they have different things they want to talk about, and then there's this grapple for which theme is gonna be more important.
Fucking romance subplots and so many things where it's like, how is this as relevant as the other things going on? Like,
it's like,
unbelievable.
I wanna talk about this impending doom, and I wanna talk about this epic plot that I have, but I also want everybody to know that they're still loved no matter who they are, so I'm gonna throw in a love story in there. Though I also feel like this is something that gets pushed a lot in terms of, it will sell better. No. Obviously, if you have a hot lead and a pretty woman next to them, or the other way around, you have a really nice book boyfriend that you can sell with the book. But I feel like the Lost Boy doesn't have the problem in terms of this grapple for what kind of message.
Like, fundamentally, it is about Jamie and Peter and what the relationship does to Jamie. And, like, sure, like, there is something akin to a romance subplot a little bit. But the romance doesn't even matter that much, because Peter hated Sally before he knew that Sally was a girl. Like, it really is, like, not that relevant.
He hated Sally just because she was enamored with Charlie and Jamie, and that was enough to hate her.
Like, Jamie liked her because she was nice and helped him. Like, crazy concept.
I know.
People like it when other people are nice to them. Peter is like, shock Pikachu face. What?
I mean, Jamie is that at first as well. He's like, oh my god, Sally is just such a nice person. Like,
what the fuck?
What's happening? Yeah, exactly. So it's not like it's just it's just Peter who's surprised. Jamie's surprised as well. But yeah, I feel like in general it fits very nicely into the already existing lore we have about
I think it's like
Peter Pan.
Definitely a worthwhile interpretation of something that's already been done a good number of times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your rating?
5 out of 5. If I could give it 6, I would.
Yeah, this is one of my all-time favorite books. It's just so good at what it does. It's just really good. Which is why I've recommended it to everyone. I'm always like, it's really good. If you're gonna read a Christina Henry book, you should read Lost Boy, because it's really good.
It still hasn't managed to trump my favorite book of the year. But it is... I couldn't imagine giving it less than 5.
Yeah, no, it's just well done. It's like it does what it wants to, and it does it really, really well.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's still a good read, even if you've been spoiled by this. But generally, it's just a really good book. You should read it. It's good.
I remember I started reading this after a friend, but I finished it earlier than my friend, and so I got to see her lose her mind, like similar to how you probably reacted to my messages that I sent to you while I was reading it. And just, even if you know the overarching plot, because you know just by the movie, by the story itself, that they're gonna separate in the end. Right?
Yeah, also, like, the prologue already is just like, I used to love Peter Pan and now I hate him. And it's like, damn. Oh, it's
crazy. The blurb is I think the prologue as well, or is it even a pro? Yeah, it's a bit. There's some additions in it, but the prologue is the blurb in this one, so it's obvious what's gonna happen. But the road there is crazy. But yeah, 5 out of 5 stars. If I could give it more, I would give it more. Fucking loved it. It's an amazing book, and I'm so happy I finally read it.
Yeah, I'm so glad I made you read it. I was like, you should really read it.
Yeah. I'm always a bit sad that I can't give you those recommendations, because usually you've already read the things where I would go, hey, you should read it. You're like, yeah, I've already read it. I thought it was okay. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm going to get there. I'm going to get to the point where I can recommend to you a
You'll
banging
get to read
book.
Something obscure, and then you'll be like, hey, you should read this, and I'll read it. And I'm like, damn, that's great.
I mean, I picked up some things at the book fair. Maybe one of them will be something that will be interesting for you. We'll see. Have to read those first. Right. Well, that being said, we hope you enjoyed this episode about a book we actually liked for once.
Yeah, rare book W, rare, like, good book.
Yeah, like, I mean, even with the Cruel Prince trilogy, it's a trilogy we immensely love, but there was still a lot of...
It's like solid, but like there's so much to talk about because it's like so close to being really good, but it fails at so many parts where it's just like, if I could fix it, I can fix him.
And Lost Boy just doesn't. Lost Boy
is just really, really good.
Lost Boy just goes through every single loop where you could go, oh, well, maybe, and Lost Boy is just like blazing through it going, I'm perfect, double A's everywhere.
Amazing
A+.
work. Yeah.
Read it. If you read any Christina Henry book, just read it. There's no need to read them in a certain order, because
except for the Alice trilogy.
Ones.
Yeah.
But in another interview, she said she doesn't want to write any more series. Like, from now on, she just writes one shots because that's what she enjoys more.
I also like them a lot more. Like, I don't know. I often feel like a lot of things didn't need to be series. Sometimes it's like, damn, this could have been a standalone. And she's very good at them. Like, the second one I also recommend is like The Girl in Red, which is also very good. But it does deal with a pandemic situation. So if that is like triggering after the past years, you're like, I don't need that in my life, skip that one. But if you like the more like horror aspect, Near the Bone is really good at horror. Oh, it's really, really suspenseful, and it starts out immediately really scary. It's really good. But yeah, if you read Christina Henry, read Lost Boy. It's really good.
Which adaptation is Near the Bone?
It's not an adaptation at all, I think.
Oh, it's just
a horror book. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Ah.
I'm gonna put it on my list. The cover looks dope. Okay, so let's just...
That's, yeah.
let's just agree that she is insanely talented. And I think nearly all of her books are worth the read.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.